Best Available Podcast, Episode 6. Hello, this is Ryan, joined as always by Matt. We have a fun show in store today. Of course, when the NFL starts, that makes our lives a little easier because we can spend a lot of time on that. So we'll get a nice little NFL Week 1 review in. Of course, we know there's 2 Monday night games tonight, but we'll get in all the games that happened already. We'll talk about those, give our thoughts and opinions. We'll talk about the NHL for the first time in a couple weeks as they near the Stanley Cup Finals. Little potpourri segment. We'll touch on a lot of different sports. We got some tennis, some NASCAR, and whatever else we can think of for that part of the show. We'll throw whatever else we need to get in that part. Then we got Start Bench Cut with a segment that an anonymous viewer sent in. He wished to remain anonymous, so we're going to keep it that way. And a fun Pops My Tarts to end the show. Matt, how are you doing? This is a big week. So the NFL obviously came back. Super Mario 3D All-Stars comes out on Friday. The weather is nice. It was nice on Saturday. It's nice today. I walked outside this morning, and I was immediately taken aback by how nice the weather was. It's a very big week. So how are you feeling?
I agree with you about the weather. You can definitely go outside later. I love when the temperature is like a high of a max 83 degrees. So anything under that is going to be pretty good. Ryan, I made a shocking discovery yesterday that I need your opinion on.
Ooh.
Did you know grapes had seeds in them?
They can. You can get seedless
I had
grapes,
no idea.
or you can just get regular grapes.
I'm at work yesterday, and I'm like, "Ooh, I'm healthy. I'll get some grapes." So I got some grapes with my Wawa sandwich. Very good, tasty Italian sub, not a hoagie. And I started eating these grapes, and I'm like, is there like a bug in my mouth? Is there like dirt on this grape? It was a seed. I never had a grape with a seed in it in my entire life. I guess my mother only purchased. And you're going to think I'm like the dumbest person in the world. I never knew that grapes had seeds in them. And I always knew the term like seedless grapes. I always heard the term, but I never put it together that they had seeds in them to begin with. How do you get them out if they're seedless? And why did these have the seeds in them? I couldn't eat them. I kept tasting this thing in my mouth every 2 seconds. It was annoying. I guess I'm the dumbest human in the world. Ryan, as a produce guy, he's probably very offended by this, that I didn't know grapes had seeds in them. What the hell? Where has this been my whole life? I had to call my mom. I called my mother while I was at work. I'm like, "Mom, do grapes have seeds in them?" She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Then how come we've never had them?" She's like, "Because I always get the seedless ones." I'm like, "Okay, well, I guess I'm an idiot."
Wow. Okay. Well, I think we should just end the show there because everything we're going to talk about is not going to top that. We're only 3 minutes in.
I never put two and two together. And Ryan and I have known each other long enough to where I've said some stupid stuff or not known things that I should have known.
Yep.
But seedless grapes, yeah, I had no idea that grapes had seeds in them until yesterday.
Okay, so we're going to move on from that just so we don't. I mean, Matt said that he says a lot of stupid things. We don't want him to say something else. So there's, man, I'm not going to bring up the whole thing. You remember we were at that pizza place the one time and there was stuff hanging on the wall? Do you remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that was a good story.
We could save that for another day. But it was a fun week 1 in the NFL. There were a lot of good games, a couple games that were never really in question. But we're going to touch on all of them. So we'll start in New England, and we will start with the Miami Dolphins going up to Foxborough for week number 1 to take on the new look New England Patriots. And Matt, you're a Patriots fan, so I'm eager to get your thoughts. But from what I had watched during the game, I thought that New England looked pretty good in the first game, considering no preseason, no regular offseason stuff like that. I thought that the offensive line looked a lot better than I thought it would. They obviously went pretty run heavy, but watching Cam Newton, he looked healthy for the first time in a while. It seemed like his shoulder wasn't really giving him any issues, which is promising. Now, the way he was running, I'd be a little worried. Just some of the hits he was taking, the way he was just diving head first, shoulder first. That was a little concerning, at least for a casual onlooker. But regardless, I thought that they looked pretty good. The Dolphins, on the other hand, I mean, you know what you're going to get with Ryan Fitzpatrick, but it looked like he was never really comfortable. He never really got into a rhythm at any point in the game. He had a couple really bad decisions, like really, really bad decisions. And he's an aggressive kind of guy, but they were just, there was one, I think it was at the end of the first half. He just threw a really, really ill-fated pass that led to an interception, which I think it was either his first or his second of the day. And Nick Folk missed a field goal at the end of the half, so it didn't come back to bite them, but you got to know you can't, especially with the Patriots getting the ball to start the next half, you can't do something like that. If nothing else, you'd have to either eat it or just throw it away. There were a couple people on the Dolphins I thought looked good. I thought a couple of their defensive players looked kind of solid. I thought Myles Gaskin provided them some spark at the running back position. For the Patriots, I really liked, I mean, they used a whole quartet of running backs. I really liked how J.J. Taylor looked. I didn't really know what to expect out of him, but I thought he put up a solid performance. And overall, Matt, let me ask you this. Are you more confident, or do you have the same confidence level in the Patriots after week one?
Probably the same. I'm happy they built the offense around Cam as opposed to making Cam fit into the offense. I think the style that they were running for the back half of the Brady years just wasn't sustainable in some ways. I know we'll talk about Tom later, but I liked what Cam did. I agree with you that he's got to kind of take care of his body a little more in terms of when he's choosing to run. There was a lot of movement on the offense, which I liked. A lot of design run plays. They either ran the ball or did a play action pass on 83% of the plays on Sunday, which compares to only 55 from the previous year. So we're clearly committing to Cam Newton this year, which I like. I agreed. Taylor looked like the fastest guy in the field for an extended stretch of time. I forgot that he was even in the running back mix for a while because the Patriots famously have 10 guys every year that could realistically go out there and run. But it was a good week one. I don't put too much stock into it like other people have that we know into their week one win because, again, it was the Miami Dolphins with Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback. So I'm not going to throw the Super Bowl parade in Foxborough just yet. Some people are out there in the fan base saying Cam could bring them to a Super Bowl. I don't know about that. But the run-heavy offense is a style that I personally prefer to the air raid and other, spread offenses. I love the power run offenses. You've known that for a couple years. So if this team can prove they can run the ball, they'll be in really good shape, especially in like December when tackling gets harder to do. So I'll take it. The kicker issue is still there, which I'm so happy that Bill just did not fix that. Nick Folk missed another field goal. It's from like 30 yards out. That's probably the only critique I have from this team. People are going to go out there and say, oh, well, all the opt-outs on defense, this, that, and the other thing. They still had 2 or 3 turnovers in that game. I thought the secondary looked pretty good. Again, it was Miami, so I'm not gonna put too much stock into it, Ryan. I'm a realistic Patriots fan this year. We got to win. Great. I think we'll really know what this team is after next week when they go to Seattle. So I'm happy. Again, I'm just happy they built it around Cam because it puts him in a situation to where he can succeed.
It was weird to watch the game because, as you're kind of alluding to, we never have really seen this from New England. I mean, they've run the ball, but they haven't really run an offense like this when Brady was there because they couldn't. We saw a lot of zone read from Cam, which I thought was a good idea. I mean, the team ran for 217 yards on the day. Cam, it shows here, passed 15 to 19, 155 yards. He had a very respectable QBR of 79.7 in his first game with the Patriots, which you could make the case maybe you want him to pass for a little more, some more yards, but overall, I think for his debut, it was a good performance. But Cam, he was also the leading rusher for the team, which I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. As I said, I'd like to see him maybe be just a little more cautious when it comes to running the ball, whether it's actually just sliding. There was that second touchdown run he had where he kind of dove for the pylon. He was a little more exposed than I would personally want him to be. But listen, if it works, if he's comfortable doing it, then who am I to say that he needs to do something different? Sony Michel had 37 yards on the ground. Rex Burkhead had some nice runs. As we talked about, J.J. Taylor, James White contributed too in the ground game, the passing game. So this offense, it's not going to be as high powered as it has been in the past. Last year, of course, that was a little different, but I still think that this is a team that can compete. Now, as you said, they have a very tough test this week when they have to play Seattle. But even if they lose that game, just based on how the other teams in the division looked, and we'll talk about them, obviously, I'd be cautiously optimistic as a casual onlooker. I'd be cautiously optimistic as a Patriots fan. I think that, as I said, you maybe want to see a little more out of the passing game as the weeks go on, but I think this was a good base start for this team this year.
Yeah, Ryan, the real test is going to come at Seattle, but Cam looks happy. The defense, and I'll mention this again because that's where a lot of the critique comes, is on the defensive side with all the guys we lost. They looked good. They looked really good. You made a good point about the offensive line. It looked much better than I thought it would, especially for the offense that they're planning to do. I really was nervous about the offensive line. It's been an issue for countless years in New England, to some respect or another, but it made me happy. I told everyone this. I told you this. I'm just happy for a change. Yep. They could go 4-12, and I'd be happy just because it's something new, and it's something Patriots fans haven't seen really ever. Is a team that committed to the run and has 4 capable running backs that could go out there and play. So I think it's a team that I'm not putting too much stock into what Buffalo did, Ryan. I'm sure we're going to talk about them soon. I'm not putting too much stock into Buffalo, but I think it's a team that can compete with Buffalo for sure in this division. I don't understand why people wrote off the Patriots. And granted, Cam Newton only had like maybe 8 weeks with the playbook, right? Because they signed him in like early to mid-July, and you could discount maybe 2 or 3 of those weeks just because of getting him to Foxborough. So he's had the least time out of any NFL starting quarterback with the playbook, and he went out there and won a football game. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to have a lot of stats there because of the style they're playing. So it's not flashy, but they went out there and won. So I'm happy. It's just something new. So I'll take it.
We'll talk about the other 2 AFC East teams, and don't worry, guys, I watched the game, so you didn't have to, because this was a tough game to get through for a number of reasons. It's the Bills and the Jets. The Bills won 27-17. Josh Allen passed the ball almost 50 times. He passed for 312 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He was the leading rusher for the team too. He ran 14 times for 57 yards, another touchdown. Stephon Diggs was heavily involved. He caught 8 passes, which was the most out of anybody on either team, for 86 yards. No touchdowns, but you can tell they wanted to get him involved, and they wanted to get him involved early. I'm going to sound like a broken record. I think people need to pump the brakes on Josh Allen a little bit. I saw more people saying, this could be a sneaky MVP candidate, talking about Josh Allen, than I should have after the game yesterday. I understand. I need to preface this by saying that I did watch the game.
I'm sorry that you did.
I wanted to go back and watch it just to see what had happened on both sides. I know the stats look appealing, but there were some really questionable things that happened throughout the course of this game. He made some, this isn't going to be me just harp on Josh Allen every week and just say everything bad. He had some good passes. He made some good plays. He made some good reads. But against a team that might end up being the worst team in football this year, he also made some very bad decisions. He made some dangerous, ill-fated passes that should have never left his hands. He fumbled twice, and it was really bad the way that he fumbled, both on running attempts. There were passes that he threw that probably should have been intercepted. By a different defense, they might have been intercepted. So I think we need to just hold on the Josh Allen praise. I know it's tough. I know it's difficult. The guy looks good in shorts. He has a big, strong arm. I get it. We need to slow down a little bit on Josh Allen. Listen, I hope the guy succeeds. I've said that every single time I got to criticize him. I hope he proves me wrong. I hope he succeeds. I hope he fixes everything. It didn't happen week 1. I get that the numbers look good, but there's more to football than just numbers. We need to wait a little bit to see if he's actually a changed quarterback or if he's the same guy we've seen for a while. In an H-back role, once again, he looked very good. He was hard to bring down, but as a quarterback, there's things that I'd like to see that just didn't happen. On the other sideline, though, I think this is the bigger story. Sam Darnold looks completely broken, which is a shame. We saw flashes at times throughout this game of the talent that he has, but it's just he almost has no awareness out there when he comes to pass the ball. He was very inaccurate. It's a shame. This is a guy that came out of USC with a lot of potential, a lot of talent, and it seems like he probably went to one of the worst situations that he could have gone to. I know doing this wouldn't fix all the issues, but I really think they need to get Gase out of here sooner rather than later and get in somebody new, get him a new voice. It's just, I don't know how you can watch this team play all of last year and then I get that it's only week 1 this year, but it's a trend and we can see that trend dating back to last year. He doesn't know how to coach. He's not a good head coach. He shouldn't have gotten the job to begin with. And I think that after what we saw yesterday when they played the Bills, I don't know how you can argue for keeping this guy in charge of your football program. It's clearly not working. He's making there's other people that are responsible, but he's part of the reason this team is such an embarrassment. And I think they really need to let him go like now. Like yesterday would have been great, but today would be good too.
Yeah, but the problem, Ryan, you make a good point to get kind of something new in there for Darnold. The issue is, since you started the year with Gase, you're only going to have someone there on an interim basis the rest of the year. So this entire year, if you think about it, if he gets canned at some point this year, it's a wash regardless, because you're not going to get in your next new guy or girl until next year, right? So you're not going to get the next coach until next season. So all 16 games he's going to play this year is just a waste. It's so funny too, because I can never escape Jets fans wherever I go. And the guy I was working with, who's in Bradenton yesterday, he starts talking about, oh man, I'm a Jets fan. I wear my Jets gear one day a year. It's week 1, and then I just never wear it again the rest of the year. And it's so funny because they're just so bad. And you're right. This was out of all the situations that a quarterback could have went to out of his draft class, he clearly got the worst end of that deal, by far. You go out and you get Le'Veon Bell, you try and give him something, you go out and get a couple weapons for him, but I agree, Ryan. I knew the Adam Gase hire wasn't going to work out. He really just doesn't seem to put it together wherever he goes. I always go back to the Miami days that he had. Everyone's trying to cling on to what he did in Denver with Peyton Manning, but I don't know, man. They're bad. I don't hate Josh Allen as much as you do, but as a Patriots fan, I'm not scared of the Bills. I'm not real, and the Jets are a joke. And I said this in our group chat yesterday, Ryan. I like over under 3 weeks before this guy is out, looking for a new coaching job. And they just, regardless of if they made the margin a 10-point margin, it was over in the first quarter. And you watched a lot more of this game than I did, but I saw enough to realize that it's the same old Jets. And it should fall on Adam Gase. I don't think it's Sam Darnold's fault. I think Sam Darnold coming out of USC was a great quarterback. I think he still is a great quarterback, but he plays for the Jets. So you can't sit there and criticize him. He was seeing ghosts last year because his team just doesn't put him in a situation where he could go out there and win. That's why I think a lot of these higher tier of drafted quarterbacks, in terms of like a top 10 drafted quarterback, they're always going to get the blame for being drafted to a bad team, right? So that's why you see these guys kind of go out of the league quick, even though they were a high first round draft pick, because they go to these bad situations and they're expected to turn it around themselves. Football is a 53-man roster, and it's a team game. So I want to hold the brakes on anyone who wants to slander Sam Darnold. It's the coaching staff. It's been the coaching staff. That's the only reason why the Jets have been bad, at least in our lifetime. It's been coaching. And the only way the Jets have been good is by coaching as well in our lifetime, right? With Rex Ryan, with those defensive years. So I don't know. It's just hysterical to watch and to get first-hand accounts from Jets fans. It's not good. Not good at all.
We'll go down on to Jacksonville, a place that Matt loves dearly, where the Jaguars, another team who will probably end up being one of the worst teams in the league, played the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts looked very good early. It looked like the Jaguars just didn't have a shot. But then, somehow, the Jaguars made it a game, and they put up 10 points in the fourth quarter. They end up winning 27-20. Phillip Rivers, in his Colts debut, I think left a little bit to be desired. He did pass for 363 yards, but 1 touchdown to 2 interceptions, a 56.3 QBR. They lose Marlon Mack for the year to a torn Achilles, so that'll be a very big loss. I understand that they're kind of well-equipped to handle it because you have Jonathan Taylor in there as a rookie. You have Nyheim Hines, who will be a good guy out of the backfield on passing downs. You have a good receiving duo. So the Colts looked good, but it's funny. Fournette said that he's finally playing with the real quarterback, so naturally Minshew goes out there, completes 19 of his 20 passes for 173 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. James Robinson, in his time as the full-time starter here, week 1, carried the ball 16 times for 62 yards. Listen, I said when we previewed the AFC South that Jacksonville, they might not win a lot of games, but they're going to be a fun team to watch, and that's what happened. They were down early, but they rallied, they came back, and they beat a team that they, for all intents and purposes, they probably shouldn't have beaten. So I don't know what happened on the Indianapolis sideline. I don't know how you can't get into the right mindset, the right discipline to kind of close this team out. And this is something that happened in another game that we'll talk about later. A superior team, talent-wise, just blew the game. We'll talk about that later. But this was a bad start for the Colts. You and me were very high in the Colts coming in, and they put up a dud week 1. It's only week 1, obviously, but you never want to start 0-1. And I'll give credit to Jacksonville, Matt. They didn't back down. Obviously, they have nothing to lose, so they can try some different things, but they won week 1. I don't think a lot of people gave them a chance, but they did.
Yeah, I'm going to use my first timeout of the podcast here to say to our listeners, pump the brakes on Indianapolis Colts slander. It's week 1, especially in this division, Ryan, this flaming trash heap of a division. Games like this are bound to happen. They really are. I agree, and I agreed with you for a while that anytime you have Gardner Minshew on the field, it's going to be exciting. It's classic Phillip Rivers, though. Late in the fourth quarter, scrambling around, you either blew a lead or you're down and coming back. In this case, a little bit of both. I want everyone to relax. There's some people out there who think the Colts are going to suck this year. Ooh. It's not going to happen. I don't, even with Marlon Mack going down, people forget how good Jonathan Taylor is. Even though he's a rookie, he's a high-volume guy. Ryan, I did notice this one thing. So this is one of the games I made sure to go a little more in-depth on last night when I got home. Phillip Rivers can't throw the ball more than 10 yards down the field. And I think even 10 yards is a little bit of a stretch. He can't throw the ball anymore. Like there's just no power behind it. I get part of his herky jerky mechanics. It's hard to throw a deep ball, but it just he and we're going to talk about Tom and Drew Brees later, but Philip Rivers' arm just is not optimal. I will say that when you compare it to Jacoby Brissett's arm, who could really pump the ball down the field but can't really do much else. Philip Rivers has the mind of the quarterback, and Brissett has the physical tools right now, but he just and they threw the ball 46 times, Ryan. I'll be honest with you, I want them to run the ball more because Philip Rivers, I don't know if you noticed this too, but it's just not as tight of a spiral. Can't really get the ball physically down the field anymore. I get it's week one, but he's not getting any younger. So the Mack injury might come back to hurt them. I just don't know with Philip Rivers, man. I'm still high on the Colts. I want to say that, but he can't throw the ball down the field at all. If I'm a opposing defense, I wouldn't even bother with safeties going really far back because he can't get the ball that far down the field.
I'm gonna be a little stubborn because, and listen, I know you've been a Philip Rivers fan too, but I'm gonna be stubborn and take the other side. I really think that things will be okay there. I want to wait to see if he can maybe get a little better in that aspect as the season goes on. Just I want to wait a couple more weeks before I transition to your side. I agree that what we saw week one was a cause for concern, absolutely. But I'm gonna just because I've been on the Philip Rivers train for a long time. I don't want to see it end. I don't want to see us come to the final stop just yet. I really want a little bit more of what he used to be. So I'm going to wait stubbornly just to see if he can turn it around. And, as you said, I still like the Colts. I still think that even if he can't push it down the field the way he used to, this is still a team that can win games, but it definitely takes away some of your offense if he's not able to do that, if he's really not able to do that consistently.
I just don't think anyone his age or older, and I'm going to count Drew Brees and Tom Brady into this category too, you can't throw the ball 46 times a game with a quarterback of that age. And especially with Rivers, who, and we've seen it with all three of these guys too, if you can't move the ball down the field, that takes a weapon away from your playbook, right? And I think if there's any week that you're going to be able to prove to people that you could still throw the ball far, it's week one, and it's still summer, like muggy, kind of humid climate in Jacksonville, where I could vouch it's pretty warm down there because, as you mentioned, it's my favorite city in the world. That's the perfect throwing conditions to be able to take the ball and just launch it. In week one, when you could still grip it and you could still, throw the ball down the field and kind of have the heat on your side. And to his credit, it's not like he had a bad performance stat-wise, Ryan. I mean, he only had 10 incompletions, like over 350 yards, but the 2 picks are going to come back to hurt him for sure. Some of the incompletions were kind of bad. So it's not like I'm going out here and declaring that I'm anti-Philip Rivers, but I just want them, and I get the Mack injury hurt things in terms of game planning, so you kind of had to scramble in terms of the backfield, but just give the ball to Jonathan Taylor. He carried the load at Wisconsin. He carried the load in high school. We saw him, or you probably saw him a little bit more than I did when he was in high school, Ryan. I just give him the ball and let him run. I mean, he's done it at both levels prior to this. I just don't know about Philip Rivers. I don't know what else he can really bring to the table. With that being said, they're not a 4-win team. I think they're much better than that. I think they're going to be in the mix for a wild card berth or maybe even a postseason berth because no one really in this division really impressed me. Obviously, Tennessee still plays tonight, but it's what you would have expected from an AFC South game week one, Ryan, for sure.
I'm going to spin zone this before we get into the next game. Philip Rivers, he might be turning 39 in December, but he has 9 kids who keep him young. So I think that he'll be okay. The next game,
That's one way to.
that's you got to look for the positives.
If you have 9 kids, that's going to age you by like 10
well,
years.
no,
though,
they
right?
keep you younger. They keep you young. They keep you hip. They keep you.
No, make you tired because you have to like.
They give.
It's like that's like a full-time job. One kid's a full-time.
They give you.
Probably raising me was a full-time job for my parents, let alone 9 kids.
No,
so.
they give you energy. They make you happy to be alive.
Oh,
that's still. That's how I'm gonna choose to look at this. So you just got to give him a little bit of time, and he'll be all right. Next game I want to talk about was actually a pretty fun game. I think it was a lot more fun than people thought it would be, and it was the Raiders. Their first game was the Las Vegas Raiders and the Carolina Panthers. This was a game that, for all intents and purposes, looked like it was over late in the third quarter. Josh Jacobs went on a 7-yard touchdown run. Las Vegas went up 27-15. And Carolina had held tough up to that point, but once that happened, I think people kind of wrote them off. But this is why I said the Panthers, they were another team similar to the Jaguars. Even if they don't win a lot of games, they'll still be interesting to watch. And give credit to the Panthers because not only did they come back, they took the lead midway through the fourth. They scored 2 touchdowns, one on a McCaffrey 3-yard run, another one on a 75-yard touchdown pass to Robbie Anderson, and they converted the 2-point conversion after that. So they took a 30-27 lead. Now, ultimately, as everybody knows, the Raiders end up winning 34-30. They scored a touchdown about 4 minutes later. Once again, it was Josh Jacobs on his 3rd touchdown run of the game. But I still like the fight out of the Carolina Panthers it's in a season like this with the completely new coaching staff, all these new things, all these moving parts that Carolina is trying to deal with. To be able to do that on opening day in week 1 against a team that is better in most cases than the Panthers. They're a team that will probably contend for a playoff spot this year. I liked what I saw out of Carolina, but having said that, I liked what I saw out of Las Vegas for the most part too. I don't like that they blew a 27-15 lead, albeit they did do it on the road. They had to travel from Las Vegas to Carolina, but
And the road excuse doesn't work this year, Ryan, with no fans in the stands. That excuse doesn't work in my book.
Well, they didn't take a train, Matt. They had to go take a plane. They had to go through the whole.
But as Bill Belichick said, it's just like practice. You know, it's that kind of atmosphere. So the road. I'm not using that excuse at all. And if I try to use it with the Patriots, please yell at me on the air. That excuse is out the window for me this year, unless it's Arrowhead or in Duval, the only 2 places that have fans right now. So go ahead, finish your point. But
I don't know. I mean, we just had a conversation about this 2 weeks ago, Matt. When you have to get on a plane and go somewhere, that's not very easy, right?
No, this is like they have like a private jet.
Oh.
It's not like flying, Spirit at like 7 a.m. out of the Atlantic City airport. It's this is a lot different. Shout out to the Myrtle Beach trip. But so in terms of the game, right? I said this about Carolina in the preview. They have nothing to lose except games, right? Because they're like an entirely new team. If you look at their additions and departures, it's like half my article because of all the people that they lost and tried to replace. Christian McCaffrey is literally the Panthers once again. Robbie Anderson had a pretty good game. So like the pieces, you could kind of see it, the direction they're starting to go in. I'm happy for Teddy Bridgewater. I'm happy he's a starting quarterback again, like full time, as opposed to being the fill-in when Drew Brees had the injury. So I'm happy it's his team. In terms of the Raiders, this is a great 7-9 team, Ryan. I don't. There's just not. They have good players. Henry Ruggs had a couple good catches. Josh Jacobs is a really good player, but I think as long, and you and I are big anti-Carr guys, as long as Derek Carr's the quarterback, I don't see any more than 500.
Well, I'll say this, Matt. Admittedly, the guy had some nice throws. I will say that.
But mind you, I don't take too much. Just like I didn't take too much stock into the Patriots game, Ryan, against the Dolphins. You're playing against a team that almost like 40% of new guys that are in there, new head coach in game 1. No fans, and you only won by 4.
I get that, but I've come around on the Raiders in recent days. Yeah, listen. I read into them a little bit. They were one of the more efficient offenses a year ago, and I think they've only improved coming into this year. So I really the defense is very questionable. They didn't do a lot to address the defense. I think if anything, that's going to be their issue. But I'm still not very high on Derek Carr. I still think that he's more of a question mark than an exclamation point. But if this offense can do what they did against Carolina, which I get it, I understand it's Carolina's defense, but I think that this team could be better than 7-9. I would be willing to die on that hill until I see a reason to go the other way. I don't know. I think that Zach Cosenza might be pretty happy this year for the first time in a while, Matt.
Ryan, I'm going to tell you, he's not going to be happy with the next 2 months of the season. You go home for your home opener, New Orleans, then at
That's
New
a
England,
game that New Orleans
home
could
versus
lose.
Buffalo,
That's a game that they could lose.
at Kansas City, bye week, out of the bye week, home against Tampa Bay. That's, oof. We're going to really find out what this team's about. Because you got to go cross country again to New England in 2 weeks.
Well, that's not an issue.
And then why is that?
Why is going cross country an issue?
Because of the body clock playing at 1 o'clock. It'll be like 10 a.m. their
Well,
time.
I was just told that going to Carolina, that playing on the road, that's not an issue.
No, I'm saying playing on the road. I should have clarified that point. Playing on the road in terms of the home field advantage of fans. I should have clarified
okay.
about that. That was my point to that, to where, yeah, that's my point. But regardless, even take that out of the equation, Ryan. Just talk about the teams they're playing.
I see some
The
wins
Saints,
on this schedule.
Patriots.
I see some
Oh,
possible wins.
You're gonna say, oh, they're gonna beat the Patriots. They probably could.
Listen.
Though.
Monday night game against the Saints. Saints, maybe you come off a big Week 1 win. Maybe the Raiders. Maybe they take a dub there. The Patriots. That both teams they're gonna run. You could see something happening there. The Bills. We're not impressed with the Bills, so they could win that. Kansas City Chiefs divisional game. Anything could happen.
No,
Tampa
Ryan,
Bay Buccaneers.
stop it.
You never know what'll happen there.
Stop. You're reacting. Listen, Ryan, I get it. You're emotional. You're starting to discover
make a
feelings
case
for Derek Carr as a good NFL quarterback.
You could make the case. That's 5 wins right there.
No, you sound like Zach now.
I'm just looking at the
Stop
positive side.
This is literally one of the hardest 2 month stretches of the schedule that anyone's going to have to begin the season. You can't, and you could even expand it and say they go to Cleveland after the Tampa Bay game in week 8. I will say this, right? I'm going to come around to the idea that post week, I'm going to say 9.
Their schedule's very easy.
Yeah, so I'm going to say that if they're going to make a playoff, and Ryan, I'm not saying this team's going to suck completely, right? I think they're going to be between the 6 and, I'm going to say it, and I don't know if I'm going to regret it, 9 win total, right? I think they could fall anywhere in between there. Same that I said about the Patriots when we did the preview and a couple other teams. That back half of the schedule, if you could win, and to your point, I'll come around to your point, if you could win maybe 2 of those next 5 games, you're going to be in really good shape.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah, you guys see, that's how it starts. I get my point out there. I kind of plant the seeds a little bit. Then I pull you in a little bit.
But that's because that was before I pulled up their second half schedule that includes the Jets, Falcons, Chargers, Dolphins. Falcons suck, by the way. We'll talk about them later. But I'm not saying they're a bad team. I want to say to Zach, I'm speaking to you directly right now. The Raiders are not a bad team, but I'm leading by example right now as a Patriots fan who doesn't really know what my team's going to be this year. I think Zach's in the same boat as a Raiders fan. Don't take too much stock into a week 1 victory. Wait until next week because, like the Patriots, they have a big primetime game against a good team, a chance to prove themselves. Now, if you're right, Ryan, and they beat or at least are competitive against New Orleans next week, I'll start to develop this opinion that I have. But I think you're rushing into things with Derek Carr this year and this Raiders team. I really think you're rushing into it.
I don't know.
This is only date 1 with the Raiders, right? first date. We're just getting to know this Raiders team. You're starting to buy in to a long-term season prediction here with them. I don't, not yet. But I will say, Ryan, they benefit from playing in the AFC West, which outside of Kansas City, it's anyone's game at that point. So we don't know what Denver looks like yet. So we'll find that out tonight. But again, like the Raiders aren't bad, so I'll give them that. They're also not overly good. But yeah, I mean, good for them. Week 1 win. It's better to have that win going into your new stadium opener against a really good team than not having it. So
a team that is bad, that probably put up the worst Week 1 performance out of anybody so far. Of course, there's 2 more games, but so far was the Cleveland Browns. They got blown out once again by the Baltimore Ravens, 38-6. Baker Mayfield, and I've been a Baker Mayfield stan for a while, but he did not look very good at all. I mean, the offense didn't look very good, but he didn't look very good either. He did not help his case. Lamar Jackson, a very calm, cool, and collected 20-25, 275 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, picking up right where he left off from 2019. He ran the ball 7 times for 45 yards. J.K. Dobbins, the rookie, ran in for 2 touchdowns. The Ravens are good, Matt. I think we talked about this in the AFC preview. The Ravens are a pretty good football team, and they showed it. They took care of business Week 1, which is what they're supposed to do. Very talented, very impressive.
I was interested to see how the defense would look without Earl Thomas. And to their credit, they allowed us 6 points in the first quarter and then nothing else. I think we said this in the preview, Baltimore good, put them in the playoffs. And that's what's going to happen. I don't think we need to look at, he threw for 275 yards, Lamar Jackson, but a very efficient 275 yards. Listen, they're going to get the recognition they deserve at the national level. I want to focus more on Cleveland in this regard. And you, Ryan, have been big Baker, hashtag Team Baker for a long time. He looked bad yesterday. And this isn't just because he's my quarterback in fantasy football, but when you have Jarvis Landry, David Njoku, Austin Hooper, Odell Beckham Jr., Rashard Higgins, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, how do you only score 6 points? I don't care if it's against the 2007 Patriots. You should score more than 6 points. There's no crowd in Baltimore. There's no factors working against you. It's a short trip, short flight, Ryan. There you go. We're continuing with the train versus plane ride bit. I don't understand it. I get it's Stefanski's first game, and it's not. You're playing against a really good team that is going to be a Super Bowl favorite this year. But what is wrong with this franchise, Ryan? I don't understand. 21 of 39 for Baker. 21 to 39. What is wrong with this team that they can't put together with all this talent? And this is a lot more talent, Ryan, than some teams that are going to have winning records this year and make the playoffs. So that's why I don't understand how you could go in and only score 6 points against Baltimore. We're not even going to talk about how they allowed 38 points in that game also, but this offensively, I don't understand it. And this year you have your first full season of Kareem Hunt, another year under the belt for Nick Chubb. And they looked like the best 2 players out there for the offense. And if you talk about offensive efficiency, I'd probably go to agree with that. But I don't get it. You go and spend the money and you get these receivers. You make the deal to get Hooper. I don't get how they can't put this together.
This is the second year in a row this has happened too. Week 1, when they come out just completely flat, just every part of their team doesn't look, I don't want to say interested, but they just don't look at all the way that they should. And I get it with what's going on, and I understand, but still, last year they lose 43-13 Week 1. This year they lose 38-6. It doesn't bring a lot of confidence, certainly, and it's I'd be at least a little concerned if I'm a Browns fan, because at least this time last year they had the Jets, right, that they could kind of bounce back Week 2. you don't really have that this year. They play the Bengals this week on Thursday. It's a short week, but not only is it a divisional matchup, we'll talk about the Bengals a little later, but I think the Bengals can give the Browns a run. You play Washington the week after that. I would know that's not going to be as easy of a game as maybe that fan base would make it out to be. Then you have Dallas, Indianapolis. I wasn't, and nobody was expecting them to beat Baltimore, but you would have at least hoped to have some positive building blocks to move forward if this is actually going to be the year that they contend. They didn't have any of that. I mean, you said that Hunt and Chubb look good. I guess that's a building block that you can kind of move forward with, but I mean, other than that, there's nothing. And I'm not going to write Stefanski off. Obviously, it's week one. It's just it's not what you want, Matt. It's just not what you want. We've heard for the past however many years. All right, this is probably going to be the Browns' year. I think they're going to be competitive. They can maybe get into the playoffs this year. Week one did not inspire a lot of confidence in that regard.
But Ryan, the difference between last year and this year is that all these guys have been there. Your return outside of Austin Hooper, you're returning the entire offense, right? Because the past couple of years, they were bringing in new guys. They were adding Landry and Beckham and all these other guys. They've been here now.
I'm willing to give them a pass, though, just this week because they're playing a team that has probably a very good shot to be playing in the Super Bowl. I'm willing to just this 1 week.
Score more than 6
I
points.
get that, but Baltimore's a very good team. They're elite.
Ryan, I look everywhere on their offense and I see a Pro Bowler, except for Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
And I'm looking and I'm pointing Pro Bowl. 6 points, Ryan, in the first quarter.
I get.
Mind you, they couldn't even score points in garbage time. How bad is that? In garbage time.
I get that.
The Falcons did that.
I understand.
Every other team did that in garbage time.
I'm willing to give. I need to wait to see how they do on Thursday before I really write them off.
Oh. If they go out there and barely squeak out a win, Ryan, I'm going to come on the show next week and absolutely blast them because you can't. This can't keep happening. Like is there like a weird curse on this franchise that they just can't win football games with a good team? I get it's week one against the Super Bowl favorite. But again, Ryan, with the talent, it's not like they're the Carolina Panthers offense. And mind you, Carolina scored 30 points with their offense. Mind you, they played a different team. But just with all the talent they have, there should be no reason why they score 6 points in any game, unless you're playing the 85 Bears. So that's my piece on them. Baker's got to play a lot better than 189 yards on 21 completions. It's ridiculous.
Let's talk about a game that looked like it was over multiple times, and then it wasn't, and that was Chicago and Detroit. So
I thought you were going to hint at a different game.
No, I'm sure you know what game I was talking about. No, not yet.
There's actually a lot of games that fit that category, too.
This one, I think, was the most surprising because with 3 minutes to go in the third quarter, Detroit goes up 23-6. It looked as though Chicago, with Mitchell Trubisky, they were dead in the water. People were calling, I mean, even going into halftime, people were calling for Foles to come in and for Trubisky to be benched, and I understand that. But then in the fourth quarter of a week one contest, the Bears rattle off 21 unanswered points against Matt Patricia's Detroit Lions, and they pull out a W 27-23. And the reason this is so interesting is because with a little under 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, Detroit's win probability was 98.3%. It was going to be very hard for them to screw this one up, and they screwed it up. Now, I need to put this out there. Okuda didn't play for cornerback. I think they lost two other cornerbacks. I know they lost Trufant. I think they lost somebody else too. So they're without three cornerbacks. Jamie Collins decided to headbutt an official, which I don't. No, that was a heinous act. That was assault.
That was not.
That was assault.
Get out.
So he got ejected, rightfully so. He got ejected. They were down some pieces on the defensive end. I get that, but that shouldn't mean you let up 21 points, 21 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. And listen, the Lions, they tried to make a comeback late, and they weren't able to do it. Mitchell Trubisky's throw to Anthony Miller, the pass that gave them the lead, I'm going to give the guy his credit. He looked bad in the first half, but that pass almost made, I'm going to say almost because it obviously doesn't make up for all of it, but it almost made up for how bad he was in the first half. That was what people were projecting when he was taken that high in his draft class. That was the kind of throw that people were excited about. They thought that Mitchell would be able to do that consistently, and obviously he hasn't. But good on the Bears in Detroit in week one. They could have just mailed it in. They could have said, okay, let's try to build on some things for next week. They came back down 23-6. I think that's pretty impressive. And for Detroit, that's, as I said, I know they were missing pieces on the defensive end, but that's got to be a major indictment on this team. And I get that it's only week one, but you can't have that happen. Not against this offense. You can't let the Chicago Bears offense put up 21 unanswered in 15 minutes. That's unacceptable.
Let's not, ordain this Chicago team as a good team, though. I want to put that on the record there. Trubisky was still 20 for 36 in the game for 242 yards. I'm still not sold on him. I'm really not.
I don't know. He looked pretty good in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, what happened for the first?
Well, maybe this is the momentum that he needs.
Matt Nagy did the same stupid stuff he did last year, barely running the football, and obviously a little bit more carries for Montgomery and Cohen than what it would have been last year. But I still think he's trying to outsmart everybody. So I'm not sold on him yet as a coach still. I agree that Patricia has some questions to answer after this game. Adrian Peterson looked good, so he's still kicking.
Matt,
big pickup for them.
Before you go any further, because there was a point I wanted to make since you brought up Nagy. There was a sequence of plays late in the first half that I really thought exemplified your point about the decision. So they get the ball back after a Detroit punt with about a minute to go in the second quarter. Now, Detroit's getting the ball to start half number 2. So in this situation, you don't want to give Detroit the ball back and give them an opportunity to score points. So naturally, what happens, Trubisky completes a pass to Cohen on first down, makes it 2nd and 7. He misses 2 straight passes, so Detroit doesn't even need to use any timeouts. So 15 seconds later on the game clock, Chicago has to punt the ball away. And then Cordarrelle Patterson gets a penalty on that punt. So Detroit gets a start at Chicago's 48. And then in 4 plays, they put up 7 points at the end of the second half, or at the end of the first half. That shouldn't happen. I don't know how stupid. Listen, I understand you're trying to be aggressive, this and that. You got to understand if Detroit's getting the ball in the second half, and not surprisingly, to start the second half, Detroit gets another touchdown. That's a 14-point swing. You can't give Detroit the ball back with a minute to go in the second quarter when they're getting the ball to start the next half. That's elementary. That's football 101. So I agree with you. I think that perfectly exemplifies your point that Nagy still does. There's things that he has to figure out. I said it in our group chat. I said it in a preview. It seems like he's a little too stubborn and prideful to kind of maybe change the way he does things. It seems like he thinks he's better than everybody else. I thought that was a perfect example.
Yeah, it also shows, I get they won the game. You made the point yesterday in the chat. It shows that you go out and do all this effort to get Nick Foles and pay him that money just for Cam Newton to look so good on like a vet minimum incentive-laden contract for the Patriots, right? It's just the irony of it all. And Cam, I think, would have fit this offense a lot better than Trubisky does. But the Collins ejection was ridiculous.
That was a pretty heinous act, Matt. I know you're a Jamie Collins guy, but that you can't have that on a football field, Matt.
I love Jamie Collins, and Ryan, I'm going to say this to you: losing a guy like Jamie Collins in the middle of a game is not good because of the range that he could cover at his linebacker position, his ability to not only drop back into pass coverage, but to get to the quarterback. He's literally one of the most versatile players I've seen on a Bill Belichick defense. Mind you, he only gets versatile guys. So losing a guy like him just flat out sucks. So it's tough. It's basically like the Patriots defense 2.0 on this team, but it's a tough loss for Detroit for sure. It's a team that you and I were both, talking ourselves into last week, thinking that they were going to win some games. I still think they can. I don't think Chicago's that great of a team. They still have all the players on defense. Yeah, that's great. You got to score points, and you're not going to be handed a win like you were yesterday. So let's not burn Ford Field down just yet. Let's let Patricia figure it out. And you've said this point about, a couple other things. People think the grass is greener on the other side until you get there, right? So let's not can Matt Patricia after week one. Look at all the talented players he's brought in defensively too, and that's been an issue for a number of years too, is defensively for Detroit. And you bring in all these Pro Bowl caliber players from New England and other places, so let's give it a week, figure it out. They're obviously not going to be a Super Bowl contender. Neither of these teams will, so let's not indict Detroit as a bad team just yet. But, typical Matt Stafford stat line, 24-42 for 300 yards. But Peterson looked good. If I'm a Lions fan, I would be encouraged by the way that he ran the football. Is he going to be an elite caliber running back? No, but if he could get you 93 yards on 14 carries, Ryan, I think you take that any day of the week, especially for a guy you picked up like 2 days ago. So more credit to them for getting that pick or that pickup. But I still hate Matt Nagy, and I know most Bear fans do too. I think he's, and I'm trying to keep this kid-friendly in terms of the language because I know there's a lot of young football fans out there that want to get educated, might listen to the podcast. But Matt Nagy's just a bleep. And you could fit in a lot of different words. I'm going to do the one that starts with an A.
He's an awesome guy.
It's one way to put it. But we'll see. I think the Trubisky-Foles kind of narrative is going to be there all year. And this won't be the last time we talk about it. So I'm really interested to see if this happens again next week, to where if we get towards halftime and they really look like, crap, and it's like, well, maybe we bring in Foles. So that's going to literally, anytime he makes a mistake, it's going to be, well, Foles is sitting right there. And then he'll come in and not look much better because people forget that he sucked at Jacksonville last year. So Cam Newton was out there, Bear fans, and you chose to not get him. So there you go. That's my statement on the Chicago Bears. But good win, I guess, on the road against a pretty good football team. So there you go.
Getting through these 1 o'clock games, Seattle, Atlanta. I said in the preview that we did, I'm done with Atlanta. I'm not buying into them. I don't like them. I think Dan Quinn should have been fired. I don't care how much talent they have. They're not going to win. And yet, something happened. They pulled me in Saturday night. I bet on the Falcons. I bet on the Falcons to beat the Seahawks. And I don't know why I did it. I said I was done, and they pulled me back in, and they sucked. I don't care what the final score was. They looked awful. They let Russell Wilson go 31-35 for 322 yards, 4 touchdowns. They let him run in there 3 times for 29 yards. Matt Ryan looked good. He passed for 450 yards, so he's, he'll be set to compete for a passing yards title this year. And that's about the only title that this team's going to win. This team sucks. They don't do anything well defensively. And listen, I know I'm just a little emotional right now. They're probably not this bad, but I'm done. I don't know why people keep trying to put this team up as like, oh, this is the year they're going to put it all together, until they fire the head coach who doesn't know a thing about what he's doing. They're never going to be good. Clearly, It's been made clear in 2017, 2018, last year, and now going into this year, week 1, Kyle Shanahan was the reason this team made the Super Bowl and had a 28-3 lead. Dan Quinn clearly had no influence on that. So that's it. I'm officially done with the Falcons. They pulled me back in for the last time. That's it. I'm done. It's over.
No.
Stop. No,
Ryan,
don't.
everyone,
no. You
no,
better be done with them too.
Says that
we are an anti-Falcons podcast at this point. I'm slamming my fist on the table. It's over.
No.
Done.
It's the problem with the Falcons is that everyone's done with them, and then somehow they pull you back in. They look good for a week, and you're like,
no. And you know what they're
going
to do too? They're going to get eliminated from the playoffs by like election day, maybe a couple weeks after, but then they go on that little run at the end of the season, like, oh, well, maybe next year. You see how they ended?
Well, that's why you should feel worse for me, Ryan. I have an article with my name published on it that says that the Falcons are going to go 9-7 this year. So you should feel. I mean, this. We both took big losses yesterday. I'm going to say. You were asking for Seattle to commit to the pass with Russell Wilson. They did yesterday.
Yes, they
and
did.
It paid off really well. So you got to give them props for that. Balls deep down the field to Metcalf. They were really trying to push the envelope there. And as a Chris Carson fantasy owner, they used them more so in the passing game as opposed to rushing. So I'll back up your point from a couple weeks ago, Ryan. They did look like, and again, I don't know if that's to say that they're going to do that every week or the fact that the Falcons defense is what it was weeks 1-8 last year, just god awful. It's literally what they averaged in points allowed last year, 38 points per game. They allowed that many points per game, Ryan, through the first 8 weeks last year, right around there, in the 30s. Then you come into this year and you do the exact same thing. And also, mind you, too, a lot of the points for Atlanta kind of came in garbage time. So this final score is kind of deceiving as a 13-point game. It was a lot more spread out through a great majority of the contest. I just don't get it with Atlanta. I don't get how a guy of Dan Quinn's caliber on the defensive side of the ball could just let this happen week in and week out. Give Seattle credit, too, to go back to the offensive point run. They had 3 wide receivers go over 100 yards on the day. That's compared, or 3 for Atlanta, compared to 0 for Seattle. But to spread it out and still score 38 points shows that they have the weapons there. And also you look at Atlanta's defense and they're just awful. Ryan, you say you're done with them. In 3 weeks, they're going to be like 2-2. And they're going to be looking good, and you're going to look at the schedule and be like, oh, they could win a couple of these games, and they could kind of sneak in because Tampa Bay is going to start struggling. You're going to pull yourself in. You're like, oh, well, I don't know about Atlanta. They do this every year, Ryan. I don't know why you're saying that you're done with them because they always pull you back.
No, they got a tough schedule coming up. You go to Dallas you go to Dallas week 2. That's probably a loss. You got to play Chicago. That Mitchell Trubisky will probably look good. Got to go to Green Bay. That's probably another loss. Carolina, they're going to play him tough.
Ryan, and it's okay. You're just hurt.
I don't see a win on here for a while, man. I'm looking at this schedule. I don't see it. This team sucks. I don't know why people.
Carolina twice in the first 8 weeks.
That'll be 2 tough games for them. The way Carolina looked, I'm done. I don't know how people can be fans of this franchise. It sucks.
How about every other week after their bye? Every other week, it's either New Orleans or Tampa Bay. And then fill in Kansas City there, too. That's a horrible way to end the season. New Orleans, Tampa Bay, Kansas City.
Listen, if they need to go 4-12 to get Quinn out of there, whatever. So be it. They're never going to be good until he's gone.
Well, Arthur Blank was very keen on bringing him back, thinking that he could solve things because of what he did at the end of last year, going 6-2 down the stretch. The funny part is I was listening to the Halper Bros podcast doing their week 1 pick'ems, and they like Seattle, and Nick's like, I'm going to take the road team, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm like, the Falcons, I'm sitting there drinking the Kool-Aid like I always do.
Like Seattle, too. Like, they've started off slow in the past, so I'm like, okay, you got to go to Atlanta. They're a team that should be better this year. Never again. I'm done. I don't.
No, you don't mean that.
I'm never gonna trust this team again. I'm done. I've
I
had
always
enough.
trust them. It must suck to be a Falcons fan. It must really suck. I've only known one in my lifetime. Steve Harper used to work with them at Liberty Lake Day Camp, and he was he was a Falcons fan back. So he's older than me. He's in his like 30s. So he knew the Falcons in like the 90s. So he really has not seen a good football team. He saw Deion Sanders though, but I don't know at what point with Atlanta do we sit there and say you have all these offensive pieces and all these weapons, and yet you haven't won a Super Bowl. And Matt Ryan, to your point, I think will win the passing title this year. That's my bold hot take week 1 prediction is that Matt Ryan will win the passing title this year. But I don't know, man. Todd Gurley looked pretty decent in the first quarter.
I don't care how Todd Gurley looked.
I do
team
because
stinks.
He got me a touchdown on my fantasy
This team stinks.
Yeah, man. I'm starting to look back at my prediction. I said the X factor was the defense. And here we go with the 38 points to the Seahawks. You should never, because of the style that Seattle plays, Ryan, and I get they pass the ball, and it might be a different Seattle team, but we only have this week 1 sample size. So cut that out of the equation. You should never allow 38 points to a run-based team, except for the Ravens.
There was I think it was 4th and 5. I forget at what point in the game it was, but if you let up 5 yards on 4th and 5, okay, I get that. They literally let the guy, I think it was Metcalf, just streak right down the sideline, and Russ hits him for a touchdown on 4th and 5. Like, you can't let that happen. Like, how bad do you have to be, really? And for a head coach that's supposed to be this defensive savant, never seen it. Not once. That's it. I'm done. The Packers and the Vikings played 43-34 was the final score. The Vikings, once again, cannot figure out how to beat Aaron Rodgers. I'll give the Vikings credit. They put up 24 in the fourth quarter. They scored 3 touchdowns. They had 3 2-point conversions, but it was too little too late. They were out of the game by that point, and they still kept letting Green Bay score. Their defense, now see, if their defense had gotten to stop, maybe we could be talking about a different story, but they let Green Bay hold on to the ball for 41 minutes and 16 seconds. I don't care who you are. You're not going to win when you do that. They let Green Bay accumulate 522 total yards. We both weren't very high on the Packers coming into this year. And listen, I don't know if this is how it's going to be all year, but Aaron Rodgers looked pretty good, I would say. That might be putting it that might be an understatement. The Packers look good. I didn't expect them to put up 43 week 1 against a pretty solid defense. Maybe I still stand by it. They're not going to go 13-3 again, but I don't know. Maybe this team, I should have given them a little more credit coming into the year.
For the sake of the show and your upcoming inevitable Eagles rant, I'm going to keep my point short. Green Bay, my only observation is, at least from the plays that I saw, Aaron Rodgers still looks like he's kind of running through it for his life at some points. I was moving around a lot more. I get he's a quarterback who likes to move around and get outside the pocket, but I saw him moving around a lot. I don't know if that's something to keep an eye on with that offensive line. Shows that we talked about potential question marks on the Minnesota defense. This clearly shows it, especially with, not necessarily the household names that Green Bay has on offense, but they look good. So we'll see. It's week 1. Everyone's healthy, and Green Bay is a team that has struggled in the past with injuries. Could be a product of the cold climate they play in and the violent nature of the game, but good win for them. There's no other way to put it. Rodgers looked good, looked youthful, and we'll say that, but no 13 wins. And Ryan, the only way they get to 13 wins is if the rest of the division plays like they did yesterday, going back to the Chicago-Detroit game. Because seeing the way those two teams played and then seeing Minnesota, that's the only way I could see them going 13-3 again, is if they just run through the division, which it could be very well possible. But, that's my point on that game. I know we got an upcoming rant coming from losing to a team with no name. But good for the Packers. We'll see. We're going to put a bookmark in the Green Bay conversation and wait a couple weeks.
The final 1:00 game saw the Philadelphia Eagles travel to football team for week 1, and they lost 27-17. They let up 27 unanswered points. Carson Wentz looked like an MVP candidate for the first 25 or so minutes. I was about ready to put in a futures bet for him to win MVP, and I'm glad I didn't do that because it was a tale of two halves. I know what happened in the second half. I'm still having trouble comprehending how it could possibly happen. So Lane Johnson was out. He was ruled out before the game started. So they started two guys on the right side of their offensive line that had played a combined 3 NFL snaps. Against almost any other team, I think they still would have been okay. The problem is that Washington's defensive line and their pass rush just happens to be their biggest strength. It's one of the best pass rushes in the entire National Football League. So already it was going to be a bad matchup. Did I think they were going to sack Carson Wentz 8 times? No, I didn't think that. It's just, I told people before the game leading up to it, there was a very real possibility that the Eagles would lose this game. I didn't think it would happen the way that it did. I didn't think that they would get out to a quick 17-0 lead with Wentz connecting on deep passes. Looked all in sync. The offense looked great. I was like, okay, they're up 17-0. There's no way they blow this. So they did. It's unacceptable. This is Carson Wentz's 5th year, and okay, I gotta make this clear. Part of the blame is on the offensive line because they're not very good, which means a part of the blame also goes on Howie Roseman in the front office because they haven't built it well enough to account for possible injuries. Because clearly, if they don't think that people are going to get injured, they haven't been watching this team the last few years. This team seems to get injured at an astronomical rate. I don't know why they haven't done anything to address it, but they had no offensive line depth, so they had to start a rookie at right tackle and a guy that played 3 career snaps at right guard. Part of the blame goes on Doug Peterson for the play calling and calling these play action passes and these plays that take a long time to develop when Wentz is playing behind an offensive line that has a 38-year-old left tackle and a right guard that's played 3 career snaps and a right tackle that's making his first career NFL start. And then once that right tackle got injured during the game, they had to bring in another right tackle making his first NFL appearance that played rugby several years ago. That was a 7th-round pick in 2018. So if that's the case, you can't just be calling deep shot plays and waiting 10 seconds for these plays to develop. That's not a good thing. That's not a good mindset. I don't care what your game plan was going into the game. That you can't do that. But part of the blame also goes on Carson Wentz because in his 5th year, he still holds on to the ball too long. He still has ball control issues. He still doesn't read the field as well as you'd like him to. He still makes very dangerous decisions when he throws the football. He still has accuracy issues, especially on the deep ball. You'd think in 5 years, this could have been improved a little bit, but he still is having trouble with these things that plagued him early on in his career and still do. And this isn't me saying they need to start Jalen Hurts week 2 because they need no. But it's still, Wentz played it off as his mentality is he always thinks he can make something happen. This is just me paraphrasing, but he always wants to try to make a play, extend this and that. Listen, that's what makes him special, his ability to improvise. The difference is that when you watch a guy like Mahomes or Wilson do it, number one, they're more talented. Number two, they know when to just let it go and just say, okay, the play is dead. Wentz doesn't know that yet, clearly. He doesn't know when to just eat the ball. He doesn't know when to just get out of the pocket and throw it away, not take the sack. I'm not hitting the panic button like a lot of this fan base is. It's week 1. It was the perfect storm of things that had to happen for everything to go wrong, and they all happened. But if they lose this week to the Rams, I'd be a little concerned. You don't start 0-2 and expect to make the playoffs, especially now with the schedule the Eagles have this year. So now this was supposed to be a game that was winnable. This was supposed to be, okay, you start 1-0, you got some tough games coming up, but you got that one win, you build on that for the coming weeks. Well, now you can't do that. So as an Eagles fan, I would tell the members of this fan base, just wait one more week and wait and see how they look next week. I think that once you bring Lane Johnson back in at right tackle, once you get Miles Sanders back at running back, which this could all happen next week, I'd like to think that the team will look better. But it's very clear that if any more injuries happen to this team, they're not well equipped to handle it. And that's my take.
Yeah, it's actually kind of not comical, but just crazy to just look at the amount of guys that are hurt. Adam Schefter tweeted out the list of inactives yesterday, and it was like half the Eagles roster that was in the tweet. You obviously have a lot more vested in this than I do. I don't blame Carson Wentz as much because as someone who's watched a quarterback play with no offensive line for so many years, it's hard to generate stuff. The thing that helps Wentz, though, that differs from what Tom did for a number of years, was that Wentz could actually run somewhat to kind of create. But I agree with the play calling aspect. Anytime you're going to run a play action pass with the offensive line as decimated as the Eagles, with a pass rush as great as Washington's, you're not gonna see that ball cross the line of scrimmage a lot of times. So I agree to wait and see, just because of just the sheer amount of guys that are hurt on this Eagles team. It still doesn't excuse blowing a 17-point lead to a team that is literally called football team. So I see the points, Ryan, but at the same time, you shouldn't be blowing a 17-point lead.
No, you shouldn't.
To that team. And especially the way they looked in the first half, too. I mean, I was at work, and then I turned around, and it was 17-0 pretty fast into the game for the most part, in terms of just building that lead, and then they slowly kind of come back. And
it was the complete opposite of a year ago, because people will remember last year, they started off, you had those 2 long passes to Deshaun, but it's just, I don't get how this is still. So I was looking at some of the leads the Eagles have blown in Doug Peterson's tenure, and it was a little concerning. I saved it. I'm trying to find it real quick because it's a little concerning the amount of times that this has happened throughout the course of Doug's tenure. So I almost have, here we go. So in Doug's tenure, they've lost 27 games. 7 of those, and I'm getting this from the Eagles subreddit, this is where I saw it. 7 of those have involved a blown double-digit lead. There was I didn't think it could get any worse than the Titans and the Panthers debacles our senior year of college. When they were up 14 against the Titans and lost in overtime, they were up 17 on the Panthers and they lost. I didn't think they could have a loss worse than the Dolphins game a season ago. When I said this on Facebook after the game, that might be the worst game I've ever watched as an Eagles fan. But this one might have jumped that, because it's unacceptable for a team. And I get that they had injuries. They're not the same team they were 3 years ago. But for a team that has so much more talent, vastly, so the Eagles are up here, Washington is down here. It's unacceptable to blow a 17-point lead. Once you get that 17-point lead, I'm not saying be conservative, but be a little smart and be like, okay, we can stop with these shot plays. Let's just be a little smarter with the football. Let's try to run the clock, and let's try to get out of here with a win. And they didn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think this also kind of shows how good of a coach Ron Rivera is in some regards too, right? To have a team with like no good players and to be able to go out there and mount a comeback. And I've always been a big Ron Rivera supporter, and he's going through so much right now off the field, being diagnosed with cancer and still going up. And mind you, too, this guy had a planned IV at halftime so he could go out there and coach the second half. So he's always going to get his guys to play for him. But I agree, Ryan. That Dolphins game last year, as an outsider looking in, was comical. But I agree, as someone who grew up literally 4 minutes from you, who has lived in this Eagles kind of fandom surrounding me for so long, that has to be up there for in terms of bad losses. And this one, too. I just... You got to give credit to Ron Rivera. That I think Rivera should get some credit for being able to coach this team up in the second half. But yeah, I can't wait, Ryan, when I go outside and play some basketball later. I'm going to listen to WIP for a little bit so I could hear what the boys over there are saying. I bet they're ripping the Eagles apart right now after this game. I wouldn't be surprised. Dallas Goedert looked good though. 101 yards and 8 catches. There you go. It's a positive. Oh, one other positive. Big shout out to a guy that we grew up with, Sean Bradley,
Yeah,
54,
yeah.
the linebacker and special teams guy. Got a tackle yesterday. First big league tackle. Went to Temple, hometown kid. Literally went from our high school to Temple and then stayed in the same stadium to play for the Eagles. So shout out to him. Repping the 609, repping RV, Red Devil Pride, all that stuff. So shout out to him, Ryan. That's the positive we could take away from yesterday. I don't know. There's probably some people out there that could relate to this. Someone, not just that went to your high school, but someone that you knew and that you like had classes with and growing up. And I don't know if you've ever talked with Sean too. Just such a cool dude. Like I remember he used to be a Chargers fan back in middle school, and he would try to tell me that drafting Terrell Pryor was like the next big thing for them, but obviously they didn't. And Terrell Pryor had a much different NFL career, but he's the one. Regardless, what I'm trying to say is we talked about the NFL with that guy. Now he's in the NFL, so it's a really cool experience. You obviously got to watch it live. I saw it on people's Instagram stories. So really cool moment there for him. And he's a guy that I think will be a big part of your defense, Ryan, by the end of next season. So give him 2 years to kind of work his way in, and I think he'll be a big part of your defense by the end of next season.
Yeah, it was, before we get into the 4 o'clock games, I just want to say, it was a little weird. I said this to you yesterday. It was weird seeing him on the screen in an Eagles uniform. I was like, that's crazy. This guy that went to high school with, and I'm not trying to pretend that I was a good friend of his, because I wasn't. It's just we were, but I called his games. We rode the team bus with him. We went to the same elementary school, so it even goes back further. We followed his career at Temple. It was just very weird to actually, with all that in the back of my mind, just actually see him. I saw him make the tackle too. I was like, oh my goodness, this guy that, that with all that, he just made a tackle in an NFL game for my favorite football team. So that was.
It'd be different if he played for Vegas, right? But to see for a team that you're literally a team that you are so vested in, yeah, it's cool. And like, I was never really like a friend of his, but like just I'd have conversations with him every now and then about football. I think he was maybe not in my homeroom back in middle school, but we were somewhat close in terms of location to be able to be like, hey, like
Sure.
That's Sean. Like I don't think he ever knew my name, but knew that he could talk football with us. We were known as the guys from Comcast on that team bus. So take that as you will. We were not the guys from Comcast, but our TV station was on the Comcast package. So it's cool. Cool to say that we called these games and pull up. I'd love to pull up our broadcast tape and hear those calls again. But yeah, I think he's a good player too. It's not like
Yeah.
we're just like homers like vouching for like a guy who's like, oh, like he will be a good player in the NFL. There's no, and if you go back and watch his combine stuff too, he looked like one of the better players at the combine. He had one of the better 40 times, I think, too. Not only for his position, but I think in general. Like, he was really fast. So it's, yeah, cool to see. Cool to see for sure. And I think, and you never wish this upon a team, but judging by the Eagles' injury history, Ryan, he will definitely get some snaps this season for sure.
So the 4 o'clock games, they were all intriguing for one reason or another. We'll start with the Bengals and the Chargers, Joe Burrow's debut. They ended up losing because they lost in the worst way possible. They were lined up for an easy chip shot field goal, and Randy Bullock just whiffed it. He missed it wide right, and they lose. But how they got there, Burrow's final drive for a rookie, especially in this environment, was very impressive. You could see that this guy's going to be very good for a very long time, and his stats might not have jumped off the page in this one, but he looked impressive. I think it's fair to say there's obviously things he has to work on, but I think the Bengals have found a franchise quarterback, so I'm sure that fan base can be happy. Give credit to the Chargers and to Rod Taylor's first start. He obviously didn't pass for a lot of yards. He usually doesn't, but they were able to pull out a win. So, I don't really know what to make of the Chargers. I'm not super high on them this year, but listen, they started off the season with a win. They have some momentum to build upon for the coming weeks, and we'll see what this team's about. But I think there were positives for both teams that they could take away from this game.
You talk about the final drive for Bo. That was arguably his best drive of the game. To be in a 2-minute drill situation. Big stay woke theory for you. Did Randy Bullock actually pull his calf? Or did he do that as like a fake thing because he just completely botched the field goal? Is that, because I think that's that. One of the kickers on Twitter tweeted this yesterday saying I did that. I think it was like Lawrence Tynes or somebody. It was like, I did that a couple times when I missed a field goal. So like, and it was like a delayed kind of thing. He kicked it, and then he's like, "Oh, my calf." I mean, you
kind of have to do
that.
You kind of have to do that in that situation. Like, even if you're not injured, you kind of have to act like something went wrong for you to miss that easy kick in that situation.
He missed that badly.
He did. You kind of have to make. You gotta like, oh, well, he got hurt. You can't really blame him. Maybe next time, but you can't just walk off the field normally after that. After your rookie quarterback just drove you down the field, you got to fake the injury. You got to.
The one thing I love about Joe Burrow, too, is you could tell he was just pissed off about it.
Yeah.
And he wasn't going to hide it. He took the blame, though, which I like as a rookie quarterback. He will be good. He just has the swagger to him, right? The stats aren't going to. You play for the Cincinnati Bengals as a rookie. You're not going to have good stats. But with that being said, he just has it.
I hate when people say that, but it's true about him.
It's true.
Yeah.
You just look at the way he acts and the way he moves, and like nothing phases that guy. He's got like veins filled with ice, and he's just ready to go out there and play. It sucks that he couldn't get that, or at least go into overtime, right? That would have at least, if they fell short in overtime, that'd be one thing. But yeah, big stay woke. Randy Bullock. It's like the flop of a kicker. I don't know. If he's actually hurt, that sucks. That stinks. Just a very unfortunate way to end your first NFL game. But that's, neither of these teams are going to really factor into much of anything. But yeah, Cincinnati, they found their quarterback, so it's just going to take time.
Another team that might have found their quarterback of the future is the Cardinals. They pulled out a big win week 1 over the defending NFC champions, the San Francisco 49ers. This is something that I thought could happen. I saw a lot of people picking the Niners, and I kept thinking the Cardinals played them tough last year, and they're a completely different team this year. And they were, to their credit, they were able to do it. They pull out a big win, 24-20. Kyler Murray looked good through the air. He looked good on the ground. He passed for 230 yards. He rushed for another 91. He did have an interception, but The team looked good, and this is the defense looked much improved. Once again, it's week 1, but it looked improved from a season ago. We have to wait to see if that's for real, if we're just going to be inconsistent. But there's a lot to be content with the Cardinals. I think that was a solid week 1 performance. I will give credit to Jimmy Garoppolo because for much of that game he did look pretty impressive. His final stat line was not very good. He ended up 19 and 33 for 259 yards, 2 touchdowns. Early on in the game, he looked pretty good, but I don't know. I'm still, I like the Niners. I don't think this loss is going to derail them. I think they'll be fine, but I think this was a bigger game for the Cardinals as they prove that they can kind of stick with, some talented teams. And we'll wait to see when they play Seattle and they play the tougher teams on their schedule. But this wasn't. I'm not going to say this was a statement win, but this was a good start for the Cardinals. I think that's exactly what this team needed.
Yeah, Kyler Murray using his legs a little bit, force feeding DeAndre Hopkins in a good way. 14 catches for 151 yards. Yeah, you were right, Ryan. Cardinals were a team I never even really thought of because you just sit there and you look and you see Niners and Seahawks. But when you really sit down and watch Arizona, and I got to see pretty much most of the fourth quarter of that game yesterday, and yeah, they look good. I don't think this is a bad loss for San Francisco in any way. I don't think that they're going to take a step back, but I will say though, they did play in a lot of those close games last year, so it's not like they ran through the NFC like their record might say. So
good point.
Expect games like this because you have all those not lucky wins, but close wins last year. That's the same side of the coin is going to go the other way for you, depending on, or if you're just the luckiest team ever. But Arizona got to win, and they're a good football team. I will say we have to wait and see if they're going to sustain it for a full year, but they are definitely better than last year. So they're watchable again, right? We can agree to that. They're watchable. They're good. They have talented players. It seems like kind of a quicker rebuild since when they were good with Arians and Carson Palmer back in our early college days. But this is a team that eventually, I don't know what the window will be, but eventually could kind of climb their way into making a deeper playoff run if all things continue to progress the way they are. But this is definitely a good statement win against a team that was the NFC champion last year and won a tough division, and we'll talk about the Rams in a little bit, but the way all these teams kind of played yesterday, Ryan, this is the best division of football. And even San Francisco losing, it's not like they just kind of rolled over and, lost. They played a good game and lost to a good team, so it's going to be exciting watching this division this year for sure.
America's game of the week, the final 4:00 game, was the Saints and the Buccaneers. A very hyped matchup, Breeze and Brady. Which, I mean, I get it, but I don't understand really why it was so hyped. Even 5 years ago, I would have understood, but these guys are old now. They're not the same as they used to be. There's more intriguing pieces on both of these teams that I think could have been showcased a little more, but I understand 2 of the best quarterbacks of all time. You got to give them the airtime. They're going to get the clicks. So the Saints picked up a W. The Buccaneers tried to make it close. They made it, I think, a 1-score game late in the third quarter. It was 24-17, but Saints got a quick touchdown in the fourth quarter. They got a field goal, and that was kind of it. That's all they needed. You look at this Brady. He was a mixed bag in his first game. There were some positives to take away. There was his second interception was all his fault. That was something that just shouldn't have happened. Arians said that the first interception, that was on Evans. Evans should have just kept running. That was a miscommunication. But I don't know. I think people need to I'd like to think people have tempered their expectations with Brady by this point. The guy's old, like very old. He's not the same guy he used to be. I still think he could be a good quarterback for this team, but we kind of saw the negatives to him. We kind of saw, the mistakes that he kind of makes with his age and, with his arm not the same that it used to be. The Saints look good. Drew Brees only need to pass for 160 yards, but if you're going to win 34-23, I'm sure they take that every day of the week. They ran 34 times for 82 yards. I mean, they didn't. If you look at just the stats, it's not like they dominated the game, but the turnovers just they were the killer. It ended up being for Tampa Bay between the pick six and the other interception that New Orleans had. They look good, and I'm sure they're going to get better as time goes on. The Saints, obviously, an elite team. They could very well be in the Super Bowl this season. One of the best teams on paper. If I'm a Tampa Bay fan, I wouldn't be too worried. I still think that they'll be fine. I don't think there are a lot of people that expected them to win this game anyway, but I don't know. It was the one thing I will say. It was a little surprising that Ronald Jones was able to get 17 carries for 66 yards. I wasn't really expecting that. Fournette got 5 carries for 5 yards. Obviously, they did just sign him, but I don't know. I think it was business as usual. The Saints, they got a week 1 win, which is, I mean, they've kind of started slow. We talked about the Seahawks earlier. They're a team that started slow in the past too. So for them to just get on the board with a week 1 win over a divisional rival that's probably going to be with them all year, that's a good start for them.
Well, last year for New Orleans, they, outside of New England, was the hottest team to start out in terms of just offensive production. They were rattling off wins. This year, I think both teams in this game, we can't take too much stock in terms of stats because I think both teams were out of sync offensively. Obviously, the no preseason games kind of impacts that too. If you're going to tell me that New Orleans is going to win by double digits and Michael Thomas was only going to have 3 catches for 17 yards and Kamara would only have a combined like 67 yards, I would have thought you were crazy, right? But they just... And you talk about the interceptions for Brady. They also had a blocked field goal in that game too. I will say, and I'm not a Tom Brady hater just because he left, but I will say I've seen this coming for a couple years. And because he was my quarterback, I had to kind of come to his defense, Ryan. But especially last year, and I wasn't holding back criticism last year of Tom, and he's just not the same quarterback, and that's okay. I mean, that's what all quarterbacks get to eventually with his age. Can he still win football games? Yes, but he's shown that it takes he especially, and this has been throughout his entire career, it takes him a long time to, work with new receivers. That's why for the past couple of years, first it was Brandon Cooks they went out and got. Then it didn't work out for whatever reason. I'm not saying it's like Brady's fault that he can't work with new guys, but then we kick Cooks to the curb, get Mohamed Sanu. That didn't work. There's a waste of a second-round pick, and there's a bunch of guys in there too that I'm skipping over. But it's going to take time. For whatever reason with Tom, it takes a long time for him to get with these receivers. I don't know if he's just so mentally there as a quarterback that he can see things ahead of, like he's just like the cerebral player, or if he just can't, it just takes a long time. I don't know, but I think for year 1 of Tampa Bay, 9 wins is realistic. There's going to be these struggles. Obviously, you played a good New Orleans team with a pretty solid defense, but it's going to take a while. He's not the Tom Brady from 5 years ago. Not even the Tom Brady from 2 years ago. If you look at what it was last year, I get all the weapons are there and everything else. It's just going to take time. But I will say, after watching a game yesterday, I'm glad I have Cam Newton as my quarterback now and not Tom Brady. I will say that. And I don't know if that's... I'm not a bitter Patriots fan, but it's gonna take a while. I just don't know what it is with him. With him and new receivers. And mind you, everyone outside of Gronk is a new receiver on this team just because he switched, but it's been like this for a while with him. This is nothing new. When I saw this on social media yesterday, it's the same thing, just different team. And if you go back and look, Ryan, if you look at the big name receivers that we went through in New England trying to get him weapons, the list is endless. So it's going to take time. I think these weapons are much better than anything we had in New England for a long period of time. So that talent will come through, but the first month, September is going to be a rough month for Tampa Bay, no doubt.
The Sunday night game, we have finally reached the end. was the Rams opening up SoFi Stadium against the Dallas Cowboys, a team that has a lot of hype. And Dallas, naturally, as they've done over the past few years, they did not live up to that hype as they lose 20-17 week one. I thought that Dak looked good. I'm not putting this loss on him. If anything, I thought that the Cowboys were a little more conservative than I thought they would be, especially with all the weapons they have on the offensive side. I thought that they'd maybe push the envelope a little more than they actually did. But I will give credit to the Rams. Maybe the continuity does play a factor, but they still had McVay there. They looked okay. They looked better than I thought they would. They did only score 20 points, but the defense looked a lot better than I thought it would. Obviously, when you have Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, those are two really good anchor pieces to build around. But they surprised me. I said this in my NFC West preview. I said this on the podcast. I'm not high on the Rams. I think their roster might be the least talented in that division, but that's an impressive week one win against this Cowboys team, who I understand you lose Leighton Vander Esch to an injury. You have a lot of different kind of moving pieces in terms of the coaching staff, but I don't know. I was very surprised. I thought the Cowboys would go in there, they'd pick up an easy win, start off 1-0, start their run to the division title and a deep playoff run, but give credit to the Rams. I think a lot, myself included, I wrote them off, and they proved me wrong so far.
Yeah, I think the Rams are going to be a decent team to watch this year. I think both sides of the line of scrimmage for them, offensive and defensive line, played really well. And I'll talk about Dallas in a second, but Goff looked comfortable. Cam Akers looked pretty good in his debut. The running game itself looked pretty consistent with him and Malcolm Brown. Obviously, he had the touchdowns that made the difference. But yeah, Robert Woods had a solid day. Everyone just looked comfortable, and I get that they had a lot of time in that stadium practicing because there's no preseason games and you could just kind of hang out there, and I get that. But at the same time, I think that this will be a good team. This is a team that's 2 years ago removed from the Super Bowl. I know we kind of not trashed them in our preview, but it's being the least talented team in their division is a lot different from being the least talented team in like the NFC East, right? Or really any other division in football. So I think it's a compliment to not only that division, but also them and the teams that they're going to play, that they're still a good team and they can hang with the best of them. Will they win a lot of games? Well, I'm not really sure. It's just week one. But I want to come to the defense of Dak Prescott. Just everyone stop. It's not his fault. For the love of God, this guy is... and I said this to you right before we were going to go on. If Chris Collinsworth, who has Pro Football Focus and all these, next-gen stats and everything and analytics, if they like Dak Prescott, then he's probably a good quarterback, right? I mean, if we as a game are going to take this step towards this analytical approach, and he grades out pretty well, then stop complaining. Do you want Andy Dalton in your life? Do you want him to start? For the love of God. Every loss, I feel like, Ryan, he gets the blame for. And you could see it everywhere. I think it's anything. I agree with you on the coaching staff for not kind of taking, and you go out and you get CeeDee Lamb, you have Amari Cooper, you have Michael Gallup, you can push the envelope a little bit. And I don't think the Gallup pass interference was all that warranted. I understand that. That was LA was the beneficiary of a couple plays that went their way on the officiating side. But just stop, Cowboys fans. I feel like some of them just want to have a bad quarterback and want to be miserable. Dak Prescott's good. You just lost to a team that played better. And I'm not calling out Cowboys fans. I see it on social media. I see it if you go through and kind of look through comments and everything, just people all around the country who are Cowboys fans rip this guy. It's not his fault. They just lost to a good team on Sunday Night Football. Or a team that played well, I should say. They lost to a team that played well on their night on Sunday Night Football. So I think this is more a story of how the Rams were good as opposed to the Cowboys losing this game. The Rams won it. Dallas didn't lose it.
So that's it. We got through every Sunday game for the NFL, and we only took about an hour and 40 minutes to do it. So good on us. We clearly got this timing thing down.
How did we fit this into an hour-long show in the morning on the radio? How did we do this in an hour?
Well, we didn't.
And especially because we had other people on our show too from time to time. How did we fit all these games into one show? I never understood that.
We'll try to do that in future weeks.
No, I think we did a good job. Give every team their recognition, Ryan, including the team with no name.
Well, maybe we shouldn't give every team recognition. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we're being too nice to some teams. Maybe some teams don't deserve
like
the
Eagles.
airtime.
Yeah, like the Eagles.
So we're gonna move into start, bench, cut. I don't know if we're gonna do Pops My Tarts. We'll see what the time's at. But I want to do start, bench, cut because it makes sense to do it in this episode. And as I said at the top of the show, it was sent in by an anonymous listener who wishes to remain anonymous, so we're going to respect that person's wishes. And this person suggested that we do the NFL intro songs, which is Fox, which is CBS, and NBC. ESPN did not make it in, maybe next time. But that's going to be our start, bench, cut. And I've thought about this at length for the past couple of days since this was suggested. And I think that I got it. So I am going, number one, I'm going to cut NBC. I think it's a professional. I think it's solid. I do think it's good. But compared to the other two, I think it leaves a little to be desired, and it brings back bad memories for me personally. And this person brought it up, which I agree with. It brought back the memories of this isn't what he said, but it was, I have to give a presentation in my English class in 10 hours. So I got to wake, you keep that in the back of your mind. So I'm going to cut, and this is something I've thought about a lot. I'm going to bench CBS, which means I'm going to start Fox. And maybe that's just because I've been a fan of a team in the NFC for my entire life, so I hear Fox is more. But when I heard it kick in yesterday when the Eagles played football team, I was ready to run through my wall downstairs. I was just ready. I was pumped up. I did a little shadow boxing. I was ready. And CBS don't get me wrong, CBS is very, very good. Their entire collection of sports intro music is very, very good. Whether it's March Madness, whether it's golf, whatever, they have great intro music for sports.
Well, you could expand that to the Turner Sports umbrella.
Sure.
And include the NBA on TNT. You can include, there's a lot of things and even if you count the MLB on TBS, I think is a good one too. That technically falls under the Turner Sports umbrella, as well. Isn't CBS under the Turner Sports umbrella, right? Am I making this up? They're somewhat affiliated with Turner.
I think so.
I could be wrong. You don't think so?
I think so.
Yeah, because they have the March Madness broadcast package. I will say, Ryan, to back up your point, CBS is absolutely electric. When I hear the March Madness song, that's the equivalent of what you probably felt yesterday. I obviously haven't experienced that in well over a year because of our country's handling of a pandemic, but hopefully I will hear that soon. But do you have anything else on that? I slightly disagree with you on it, but not too much.
Yeah, I know which one you disagree with me on. But yeah, I think listen, a couple days ago I had CBS number one, but I'm telling you, I heard that Fox music kick in yesterday and just something came over me. I was like, ooh, like that was the most invigorated I had felt in a very long time. So that took the top spot for me. And I don't know, that's something that changes, it seems like almost weekly. But for right now, I'm going to start Fox. I'm going to bench CBS. I'm going to cut NBC.
Well, I think the love for either Fox or CBS comes with where your team is either in the AFC or NFC. As a fan of the AFC team, I'm going to put CBS as a start. I'm going to bench Fox, but I think they're interchangeable. I will say in the one or two Fox games that we get every year, I enjoy them a lot just because it's something different. I think the score bug that they added was awful.
Yes.
We didn't talk about that yet. Granted, it was in the Super Bowl. I don't think they listened to any criticism of it after the Super Bowl. I don't like how, I get we're talking about theme songs here, but when they score a touchdown, why do we need to see the word touchdown and then who scored it? Like, you just watched it happen, and you just heard Chris Myers or whoever called your game say touchdown for Dallas Goedert, and it's like, I'm just saying Chris Myers down. I don't know who was there. But
Kevin Burkhardt.
Regardless. Okay, so Kevin Burkhardt says touchdown for Dallas Goedert. Why do I need to see it superimposed on the screen in this big font right in my face with this graphic? How much money did that cost to create? And then the way my eyes work, Ryan, it throws me off this little score bug that they have in the center of the screen. As you mentioned to me from one of the legendary Monmouth professors, Dickie Cox, your eyes read from left to right. So it throws me off having a score bug directly in the center like that. That's small, like a little square.
It's a worse version of the ESPN one they had in the center years ago. And at least that one...
That was awful.
Well, at least that one
really
wasn't
bad.
like obtrusive, though. You know, like I understand it was like a different kind of period of time, but this one's just
here's
so
how it
like...
should be.
Bleh. I hate it.
So here, the only way you could do a small little square like that is for baseball, I think. Put it in the bottom corner like Fox does for baseball, right? And it's fine right there. And that's the only sport I think it's acceptable for, to do a little box.
Oh,
like
I'm not
that.
even talking about the box. I'm going back to like 2000, like I think it was like 2006. It might have been a little after that.
No, I know what you're saying. No, I'm not talking about the little
like,
box they had in the top right, in the top left corner. I was fine with that. I think their best years was the bar, personally. I'm a big fan of football having the bar because your eyes read from left to right.
see,
It's different for a sport like basketball or hockey just because there's a lot of other moving things going on. You have a shot clock, obviously, in basketball. In hockey, there's just the camera's constantly moving, so you can't really have too much going on. But for football, I'm a fan of the CBS bar, Ryan. I think that should be it, or the way NBC does it. But to have it just throws me off in the center of the screen. And then when they kind of do the, I should know this because I used to do, I had that ESPN class at Monmouth, Ryan. When they do like the little dropouts for like a stat line, right? Say like, Carson Wentz, 12 of 42 for passing or whatever, and 8 sacks. You could barely see it because it's like a translucent color. So I half the time I could barely see it unless I was right next to the TV to read that. Not a fan. So I know I'm starting CBS, benching Fox, cutting NBC. But yeah, this ended up turning into me bashing this graphics package.
I'll tell you, I don't want to. I was not a fan of I think their graphics have gotten worse progressively over time, which I don't know how that's
100%.
possible. But I did not like the one they introduced in 2017, which was just very it just had the 2 team colors and then just the name. I thought that was too plain.
Are you talking about the little thing in the top?
No, I'm the
corner
one at
that they had?
the one at the bottom. It was like the bar. It had it was.
Oh, I know what you're talking
Which
about.
it was very plain. But the problem now, they went too far in the other direction. Like, I like a little bit of pizzazz. They went too far.
Speaking in terms of graphics, NBC I think does the best job
Yes.
in terms of incorporating the pizzazz, like you say, while not being like in your face about it.
I'm trying to like it's been a while since I've liked a Fox score because I'm going through them right now. I think
So
2014 to 2015 I think was kind of solid. I think that it gave you all the information you needed. It wasn't obtrusive, but it was kind of unique. I liked that, but
which one was that?
that was it was part of where they had the box in the top left, but it wasn't modernized yet. Like it was like when New England and Atlanta was in the Super Bowl, like that was a little different. That one was good too.
that one-
I like that one as well, but
That got the job done, but when you compare it to, I like for football when you could add the logos in. Again, it's different for other sports. I think NBC in general has great graphics packages. You look at what they do for the NHL. I think that's top tier in terms of that. And it's funny you bring up the ESPN. I think ESPN for a lot of other sports. I think their college football one sucks this year too. It's probably going to be the same thing for the NFL tonight, but for other sports, they've been pretty decent to pretty good. Like I like what they do with the NBA. I like what they do with baseball. But this Fox football thing, man, just throws me off. I don't know. And can you imagine the amount of money they spent to do the touchdown one, or every time someone scores, it goes whoosh, touchdown, Eagles. Like, how much money do you think that cost? And you just saw it. Why do I need to be a reminder? Like, why? CBS just has the bar turn over to say touchdown. Why do I need to see this gigantic graphic that says touchdown? I just watched it happen.
I'm looking at their one that they used in 2004. Even that one was so. I don't like the bar at the top, but like if they moved it to the bottom, the one they used in 2004, I think it was kind of unique. I like that one a lot. The one they used from 2006 to 2008, where it was like it was gray, but like when the team had the ball, like you'd see the colored bar above their name.
I was kind of a fan of that.
I like it's like
it brings me back nostalgia. That's what that reminds
me.
Well,
that's the thing too. Like I know a lot of people didn't like that, but it's better than what they have now. Like as I said, I don't know why we're talking about a score bug for 15 minutes, but I like something that's unique to the network, that's pleasing to the eye. And I understand graphic design is difficult, but there's got to be somebody there that looked at what they were going to introduce for the Super Bowl and be like, guys, this isn't what people want. Like I don't know who this appeals to. Like, I don't know what this is supposed to do. I'm
telling you, like for me, when I watch sports though, when I look for the score, I don't look in the dead bottom center of the screen. Because every other sport, it's in a corner because it's easy to find. So that's, for me, it's the placement. If they took that and moved it over to like the corner, I might be a little more intrigued by it. But they did it. They rolled it out for the Super Bowl. A week later, they started it with the XFL. But you're right. You said it in the group chat. We all kind of forgot that we didn't like it because of everything with COVID and everything else. But yeah, not good, Ryan. And you get it more so than me because you're an NFC fan. So you're going to have to love it because they're not getting rid of that anytime soon.
Well, I will say they seem to actually change it pretty regularly. So I'm hoping that next year, because it seems like they, for most intents and purposes, they tend to go like 1 or 2 years on each score bug. So I'm hoping that in 2 years, it's better. But
that's more than any other network. I mean, CBS will do subtle changes every now and then. Same with NBC. They do it more than any other network. Actually, ESPN does it a lot for football too. The college football one they did sucks. I don't understand it. It looks bad with their ticker that they have right underneath. Everyone's going to see it tonight. If it's the same one for college football, it'll probably get on your nerves with the ticker at the bottom. So we'll find out tonight with Monday Night Football what they do.
So that was, we're not going to do Pops My Tarts because we're at about 2 hours right now. So we're going to save that. We may have another episode this week. It depends. We may have our first ever guest.
We're trying.
It depends on this person's very busy schedule, which is actually something we'll talk to him about, or her. We don't want to spoil who the guest is, but we think that you guys will be intrigued by them. We think that they'll give good answers, but we're not going to tease it any longer. This has been episode 6 of Best Available Podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you guys next time.